Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Sam. We have with us Sam Daley Harris. Sam is a longtime organizer and the author of Reclaiming Our Democracy. Welcome, Sam.
Great to be here.
And tell folks a little bit about your work. Like the I know the driving force in your work. It's transformational advocacy. Like, what is that? How did you come to it? And what do you do?
Yeah, maybe I could start with the did I come to it?
Okay,
And
sure.
I like to use Marshall Gans, a professor at Harvard, developed the story of self that basically asks what happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to this commitment. And so I really urge, when I tell my story of self, which I will in a moment, I urge viewers and listeners to think about theirs. What happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to this podcast and your own commitments? So here's my story of self. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music, and I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12 years and taught high school music. And then 45 years ago, I founded the Anti-Poverty Lobby. Results, and a lot of times I'm asked, music, poverty lobby,
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
the
yeah.
connection? And when I look back at my life, there's certain experiences that start pointing me in a different direction. The death of a friend around high school graduation in
Mm,
1964 and the assassination of U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy around college graduation in 1968 got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, it's now 1977, I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger put on by the Hunger Project. And I go to this event thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. I'm thinking, well, it's inevitable because there must be no solutions. Again, what do I know? Because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now. But I go to this event and it's obvious right away there's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature, people.
mm,
We'll just never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own. And my question is, why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. This is the end of the story. In 1978, 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students, classroom by classroom, on ending world hunger. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements from Jimmy Carter's Commission on World Hunger calling for the political will
mm-hmm.
to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? I don't want to know if you wrote him. I don't want to know if you met him,
Yeah.
just the name. Out of 7,000 asked, 200, fewer than 3%, could answer correctly.
Mm,
6,800, over 97%, could not tell me the name of their member of Congress. And results grew out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington on the other. And so it's kind of a cockamamie route from music to activism. Um, and those high school students who I was asking, they're in their 60s now.
yeah, I was thinking my sister was in high school in
Okay,
1979.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
was going to say, you know, I had a front row seat on the National Slumber Party that
Mm,
goes on in terms of people not knowing, not involved, not engaged. I had a front row seat almost 50 years ago
mhm.
in terms of that question.
Fascinating. So you were being a high school, or you were being a musician, a
And
high school music teacher,
yep,
and somebody invited you to an event, and
my yoga teacher
oh,
invited me. I thought, well, he said, no yoga next Thursday, whatever. I'm going to this event on Ending World Hunger. And I thought, well, he never cancels yoga. And Ending World Hunger, that's impossible.
mm,
Let me go check it out. So, I mean, I was in the kind of, it can't be done
Yeah,
big
yeah, yeah,
time
yeah.
at the
So you just
beginning.
went out of pure curiosity. This is weird. What the heck is happening here?
Yeah,
And then and then you leverage. This is something that I talk about is right leveraging what your assets. You leverage your connection to high schools
yeah, yeah.
to start
And,
this conversation.
and there was just a lot of paying
Mm.
attention to the calls for the political will to end hunger, asking
Caught your
who's your member of Congress and paying attention that hardly anybody knew. Not that they were even active. The 3% who knew didn't necessarily do anything about it. Just paying attention on in that kind of way. Yeah.
yeah. I'm trying to think if I knew who my congressman was when I was in high school. I think so, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
I mean,
Um,
let
yeah,
me just say one other thing.
what
That for me is one of the problems with civics classes. Well, A, we don't have them enough,
anymore? Yeah,
one, but B, sometimes it's just kind of memorize the answer, spit it out on the test, and then forget it. It's like studying about democracy, not using
yeah.
democracy. And so I think it's an important missing.
Fascinating. Especially right now, it's really interesting what people don't know. And then I'm like, wow, this is actually complicated. I can't explain this in 5 words that they have to
Yeah,
have taken a social
yeah.
studies test, a
Yeah,
class.
kind of going back to the National Slumber Party, when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, 100 million Americans didn't vote.
Yeah.
And 4 years later, when Biden was elected, it was the largest percentage turnout in 125 years, and 80 million didn't vote. So there's this non-participation
Yeah.
is quite astounding in our country.
Factor. So tell us about what you developed, right? You developed a lobbying, you had
Yeah,
conversations with high school students, you
yeah,
developed a lobbying group,
yeah.
and there's something unique about what you do and how you organize.
Yeah, well, so let me go back and say, so I'm in Miami forever, and then I move at probably age 34, something like that, to Los Angeles. And
Mm,
it's in Los Angeles that results starts. There's another story to that, um, but the question we had was, how can we be effective in Washington from Los Angeles? That was
mm,
sort of our question. Of course, we expanded. Eastern and Delta Airlines used to offer 21 flights for $649 if you did them in 21 days. And I did 5 21 city trips. I was a substitute teacher paying the bills, but I did 5 21 city trips over 18 months
mm,
in 83, 84, and 85 to expand it. But but what we stumbled into, it's like we were not geniuses and we had no political science degrees. I had a music degree or two. So we were just trial and erroring what we did. But what we stumbled into was what I call transformational advocacy. Quite frankly, I got this from the professor Hari Hahn, who in her books and her writings talks about uh, transactional organizing and transactional mobilizing and transformational organizing, which I felt was more what the staff did. And so I renamed it for what we did was transactional um, transformational advocacy. Transactional is sign the petition,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
transaction complete. But what we stumbled into was transformational advocacy, where you're trained, encouraged, and succeed at doing things as an advocate you never thought you could do, like meet with your member of Congress and bring them on board to your issue. And when you do those things that you didn't think you could do, you
Mm,
see yourself differently. That's
mm,
the transformation. And so, well, I'm going to tell you one last thing about that. And it's when I do my talks, and I've done way over 100 in the last 19 months, I tell people here are 3 things to look for if you're looking for an organization that works to deliver transformational advocacy.
mm,
One, recruitment and community building. Recruitment, they bring new people in, not just to build an e-blast list, but to form them into local chapters so you're not working alone. That's the recruitment. And the community building is they would have a whole of organization monthly webinar with guest speakers, Q&A, inspiration. So if you're looking to whether the organization is offering transformational advocacy, one, recruitment and community building, two, training. How do you get the meeting with the elected? How do you plan for the meeting? What do you ask for in the meeting? How do you write a letter to the editor? Two, training. Three, the organization encourages breakthroughs. They encourage their volunteers to move out of their comfort zones. So, well, there's a drawing in the book, a small circle labeled your comfort zone, and then a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens.
Hmm.
And so you really, does the organization not kick you out, but kind of encourage you
Got you. Yeah.
to do things as an advocate you never thought you could do? And so that's a couple of more glimpses of transformational advocacy. I'll do one more thing. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example of a volunteer. I'm thinking of Maxine Thomas of Indianapolis, Indiana. She's amazing, but we're actually all amazing if we find the right coaching, the right structure of support, the right chapter community.
Yep.
And Maxine said to me, I had a heart for service, but I was clueless about advocacy,
Hmm.
especially political advocacy. And Maxine, it's a longer story. She eventually finds results. She gets trained. She gets a scholarship to go to a results conference in Washington, D.C. And she meets for the first time ever with both U.S. senators and the representatives from Indiana. And she said after a full day of meeting, first ever meeting, she said, I was euphoric. I
Hmm.
was on this high and felt I was part of something revolutionary. From I was clueless to I was euphoric. That's transformational advocacy, and gives you a little flavor for kind of what we're
Yeah. That's
offering.
that. That's really fabulous. There's a couple things I kind of want to draw out. One is I uh like an example of things somewhat gone wrong, right? Like my my ex-girlfriend used to be part of an organization that advocated for formerly incarcerated people in Connecticut. And a lot of the members in the organization were formerly incarcerated, and they had varying degrees of educational background. And they would be given leadership roles, which was fabulous, but sometimes they didn't get the training. And there were times when someone would go into a meeting and it would not go
Yeah, yeah,
successfully because they didn't have all the support.
yeah, yeah. And so I kind of going to do a variation on that, which is the extent to which too many nonprofits don't train their members. And I'll tell the story. I was talking to the head of organizing about maybe 7 years ago. Very large organization. Everyone watching and listening to this would know this organization. And the head of organizing said to me, we can't let our volunteers write letters to the editor or op-eds because they'll get it wrong and misrepresent the organization. Like protecting their brand was more important than training their members. And one of the groups I coached its first 7 years is Citizens Climate Lobby. And the year before COVID, their volunteers had 4,300 letters to the editor, op-eds, and editorials published. One group saying they'll get it wrong and misrepresent the organization. Citizens Climate Lobby saying, well, what do we have to do to help them get it right? And give that to them. And so there's this real chasm and gap between what volunteers can do and what organizations are up for training them to do.
Yeah. Uh, I worked in the nonprofit world for a long time, and very tiny nonprofits are like, thank God volunteers. And larger, more professionalized nonprofits are like, oh, volunteers, they're a hassle. Right.
Yeah.
And I've worked for campaigns. I have volunteered for campaigns. And what they would do is try to get names of people to sign letters to the editor, as opposed to people to write letters to the editor.
Mhm.
And the letters to the editor they didn't have any soul, right? Because they were written
by somebody else.
by somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
not, they were
Yeah.
written knowing that they would be signed by somebody else. They were
Yeah.
written
Yeah.
corporately. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and then about transformation, I just wanted to say it's like those ropes courses and whitewater rafting
The
type
breakthrough
personal
thing. Yeah.
transformation things, where it's like once you know that your body can do something, you know yourself differently.
Yeah.
And it applies to having these conversations that make a difference on a high
Yeah.
leverage as well.
Yes. And our whitewater rafting is our meeting with our member of Congress. Our letter to the editor got published. Our speaking at a Rotary Club or whatever it is, that none of which I thought I could do. And that's, in a sense, our transformation, our whitewater rafting.
Hmm. Yeah, part of me is like, oh, I know I can do those things. But there was a time I didn't, first
Yep.
of all.
Yep.
Oh my God, like I'll never forget the first time I was interviewed on television. Big deal. And it was, it was a very short clip. I don't remember what it was related to, but I remember what it felt like. I remember telling my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But so the question is the nonprofit you're volunteering with providing these kinds of opportunities? Is it working to deliver transformational advocacy?
Mm.
Or is it giving you like sign this petition and goodbye and nothing much more than that?
So I have a question. It's transformational for the doers, right? Is it also intended to be transformational for the receivers of the advocacy?
Well, or the issue that
Or
we're
and the
working
issue,
on.
yes,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, I have this great story. We shall see if what the end is. But Results Volunteers, anti-poverty lobby, started lobbying in 1984, 41 years ago, on child survival issues globally. And UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, was reporting at the time 40,000 children around the world were dying every day from largely preventable things, measles coupled with malnutrition and things like that. Over the last 41 years, the global child death rate has fallen by 66% from some 40,000 a day to 13,125 a day. Amazing. I mean, we never hear about that,
Mhm.
but it's awesome. So I don't know if your viewers and listeners know, like Nick Kristof would tend to have an end of the year column about the world is better off than you remember. Poverty's gone down, child deaths are going down. That's what this is part of. Well, then Mr. Musk and Mr. Rubio and Mr. Trump come along and they start gutting these programs where, like, for the first time in 41 years, could easily see an uptick in not a continued reduction. But this is a part of the story I want to tell
And
people.
also Palestine.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so on July 23rd, the House Appropriations Committee, not the Democrats on the House
Mhm.
Appropriations Committee, basically rejected President Trump's cut for next year. So the current funding for maternal and child health globally is 915 million, and President Trump proposed 85 million for
Mm.
next year's budget, which is like a 90+% cut.
Yeah.
Well, the House Appropriations Committee agreed to the full 915 million, not
Mm.
Trump's 85 million. But that doesn't come out of nowhere. There were two House Republicans and two House Democrats who led on a letter that was signed by 128 members of the House to the top appropriators, urging robust funding for maternal and child health and a few other related programs. People were able to get their members of Congress to speak up. Now, the subcommittee that decides this at first, then it goes to the full committee. I was talking about the full appropriations committee. There might be only 13 members on it. When you're a
Mhm.
13-member subcommittee and you get a letter signed by 128 of your House colleagues, you think, they're paying attention a bit to this. We better take a look at it. We want them to think we're doing our job. And so, but this has been decades of lobbying by volunteers, face to face, letters to the editor, more than that, um, with members of Congress. And I've been waiting for transformational advocacy to show up this year. And in the House now, it now goes to the Senate. And then there has to be a full House and Senate version that the president signs. And then it has to be spent correctly and implemented and not thrown away. But yeah, so the transformational advocacy has contributed to a 66% decline in global child deaths over the last 41 years. And we shall see whether it's now contributing to a little backbone from, in this area anyway, from
Mm.
members of the House and hopefully next the Senate and onward. So it's a glimmer of
Yeah.
hope in an avalanche of cruelty,
Oh,
really.
yeah.
And
And potential despair. And I I'm I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, so people are transformed, people who didn't know they could do this, they do it successfully, they make a difference on an issue. Do you think it's like I'm seeing two possible modes of action for that? Like it could, so is it that people are prepared, so they're doing things well, people are transformed, so they're coming with a lot of energy, right? That's sort of one. Or is it because people who just would not have been involved at all are involved, and so the numbers are higher?
well, it's always about bringing people in. Now, I've just been talking about results, and mentioned I did 521 city trips in the 80s, beating the bushes and starting chapters. When I was coaching Citizens Climate Lobby, it was 2006 October. They had zero chapters in zero states with zero members. And I was coaching the founder who had been in results for 13 years. And then he went and saw Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth
Mm-hmm.
3 times in 10 days and decided he wanted to start a results styled lobby on uh,
Climate.
climate issues. Well, before COVID, this zero chapters in zero states grew to 400 chapters
In 14
between
years. Yeah.
2006 and sorry, and 2019. Now, the transformation advocacy is about people getting together. So when they would have their monthly webinar, there'd be 50 in this room, or 40 in this room, or 30 in this room, or 12 in this room. And then COVID hit, and they did their national webinar. It was one by one by one. There weren't 50 anymore in Berkeley, Oakland, or
Mm-hmm.
30 in Santa Rosa, California, kind of thing. They were all in their own homes. That's why I gave you, the number of letters and op-eds before COVID was 4,300. Well, COVID did a number on transformational advocacy because it was about chapters and face to face, and that got blown up. And now it's having to be rebuilt. I'll give you one other example. The year before COVID, CCL had their conference in DC. There were 1,500 people and 504 congressional meetings.
Hmm.
This year, there were 800 people because it's building back up after COVID. There were 800 people and 404 congressional meetings. So there's been this shrinkage that instigated by stopping people from getting together, the COVID thing. So yeah, so that's if I could say one other thing, I just love this story, and it's really about the cynicism that's so prevalent for folks. And I was interviewed on an NPR program. I don't know if it goes to where you are, called 1A. And it goes to maybe 350 stations around the US. And this was last year, and I was so blown away by how vulnerable the interviewer was. It was like a 13-minute interview. This was question number two. He said, the passive nature to our politics today, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career and I feel beat down by it. I don't participate the same way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I mean, I know you know that. What am I feeling? What's the way out of that? I mean, I was blown away that he was so honest
Yeah.
about this. It's a grind. It's a grind. I feel beat down by it. The first thing I said to him was, Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweickart said, we aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth.
Hmm.
We're the crew. Well, are we? And if we're crew, how does crew operate? And the second thing I said to him was, futurist and climate activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything about it. Why would I if nothing I do makes a difference? And so it's kind of my answer to the book Reclaiming Our
I
Democracy.
was about to ask
It was
about the book. Yeah, tell us about the book.
released in 1994, so it's 31 years old. Why re-release it? And it's completely updated and the like, but it's because of that agony, because of that cynicism that he expressed so powerfully that millions and millions and millions of us feel, that I felt it really needed to get back out there.
So a lot of my work is about um, helping people transform their unbearable feelings about what's happening, right?
Mhm.
So what would you say to somebody who says it's too much? Like what's, you know, yeah, what, what would you
Well, there are a couple of
what
things.
would you give them to do next?
Well, right. Well, so first of all,
Yeah.
I would start with don't do it all, focus. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in other words, I'm going to name some groups: Results on Global and Domestic Poverty, and Citizens Climate Lobby on climate, and the Quaker Lobby, FCNL, on peace issues, and I could keep going. Don't do it all, focus, pick one. And the other thing is, hopefully in the program notes, we'll have this link to a sign up sheet. And I'll just tell quickly, if folks go to reclaimingourdemocracy.com, on the homepage is a learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And that links to the same sign up sheet. And you can let me know if you would like me to connect you to one of those. Maybe it's results on global domestic poverty. Maybe it's to Citizens Climate Lobby on climate. Maybe it's the Quaker Lobby on peace. And then there are two religious organizations, Catholic Relief Services, which I coached, and now I'm actually coaching currently the United Church of Christ Climate Hope Affiliates. And they're brand new. It started this year. In March, they started their first chapter. And now they have 8 chapters. I think by the end of the year, they'll have 16. And they're having their monthly webinar with guest speakers and Q&A and inspiration. And I'll tell this quick story. So on their monthly webinar, they always have a grassroots victory where one of the chapters did something, like had a breakthrough of some kind. Usually they'll tell um, what the struggle was, what they had to struggle through to get to the victory. But in July, the grassroots victory was one of the folks in the newish, it's 4 months old, chapter in New Hampshire. And the story was that we've met with our US Senate aide
Mm-hmm.
every month for 4 months. And in fact, the Senate aide is going to law school. So he brought the aides to the fourth meeting. He brought the aide who's taking over so that they make that connection. Well, where do you read about a group that's meeting monthly with their Senate aide on climate in this particular case? Um, so my answer to your question is I would urge people to join a group like that one where they would get a structure of support, where they wouldn't be acting alone, where they would get training, where they would be encouraged to have a breakthrough, not maybe not right out of the box, but eventually. I'm going to tell you one other story
Okay.
in this vein. I was talking with a volunteer a couple of weeks ago on Zoom in Utah, and he was saying to me that in September they're going to have their, for them it's annual, their hike with their Republican U.S. senator. It used to be their rep. He took Mitt Romney's seat, so now
Mm,
it's their hike with their. It'll be a 3-hour hike, and there'll be about 30 volunteers on the hike with their senator. I said, "Where did this come from?" And he
yeah,
said, "When
yes.
he was elected the year Trump's first term in 2017, he announced that there would be a town hall meeting hike, and it would be an 8-hour hike. And
Mm-hmm,
8 people showed up, and 6 of them from Citizens Climate Lobby. I don't know that I could do a 3-hour hike, but whatever. Um, and they showed up in force the next year. And so he promised to give them their own hike, the
mm-hmm,
CCL hike. And so
mm-hmm.
their annual hike is in September. And like, raise your hand if you're going to do a 3-hour hike with your U.S. senator, in this case, Republican of Utah. And so it's that's not usual,
Mm-hmm,
that,
mm-hmm.
but you
It
don't
makes
do
me,
that alone.
yeah, you don't, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of when I was in the bisexual movement from 1991 to 2005, and around, I don't know, the early 2000s, the marriage equality issue was active around the country, and in Connecticut, um, there was a marriage equality group that had hired a lobbyist, and they were starting to do outreach to the community. And we had one member from our bisexual group was attending the meetings, and then they had a big community meeting with 100 people and 8 people from our group, and we all sat together, and there was a, go around and give introductions, and we said, oh, I'm here from Combination, here to make sure for bisexual inclusion, I'm here. And at the end of the meeting, the lobbyist came right up to us and said, what are your demands?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If I can go back to that story in Utah,
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
first hike in 2017, the one of the hikers said, "What are you going to do about carbon?"
Mm,
And the then congressman said, "I was just the mayor of Provo. I never thought about what I would do about carbon." And several years later, he started the Conservative Climate Caucus in the House. At the end of last year, there were 87 Republicans on the Conservative Climate Caucus. Now, some of them were BS,
yeah.
greenwashing, and some of them were serious, but it still was a space where they could talk about what they would do and the like. So if you're not in favor of sometimes slow progress, this might not be for you. I mean, when we lobbied on child survival, it wasn't exactly the
Overnight.
death rate plummeting in year 2 kind of thing. But over 41 years, it's been going back to that issue, a 66% decline. And maybe now the House, the House Appropriations Committee, you know, balked and said no to. If I could, let me give
Yeah.
you one other one. Um, the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria, and its partners like PEPFAR, the President's Fund for AIDS, Emergency Fund for AIDS, have saved 65 million lives since 2002. Now, where do you read about 65 million lives saved? Well, that's what's happened.
Yeah.
And the funding for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria for this current year is $1.65 billion. And President Trump's budget for next year, 2026, is 800 million, less than half. And the House Appropriations Committee just agreed to 1.5 billion, not the 1.65, but
Yeah.
not
But
Trump's 800
10%
million.
decrease. Yeah.
Yeah, but that didn't come from nowhere. Um, in Congress, the same two House Republicans, and in this case, three House Democrats, led in getting 160 members of the House to sign a different letter urging for full funding, uh, strong funding for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria, and PEPFAR. And
Oh,
who
yeah.
got 160 to sign it? Well, volunteers in many cases, not always, but in many cases, it was volunteers who made that happen. So there's there's a seat waiting for you if you want to join in the fun. And
Mhm,
but most people don't know about transformational advocacy or advocacy beyond the email form letter kind of thing.
mhm, mhm.
Um, if I could tell you this one statistic, the Congressional Management Foundation did a survey of uh, uh, staff, advocacy staff,
Mm.
and they asked the advocacy staff what their primary tactic was. And 79% said an email form letter was their primary tactic. You know, give them your name and zip code and we'll send the letter for you. They asked congressional staff, and only 3% said an email form letter was highly effective. Well, 94% said an in-person issue visit from constituents was either highly or somewhat effective. So it's the handwriting's on the wall, but people need to know how to connect with these kinds of groups. And reclaimingourdemocracy.com, the on the homepage, learn more. That's where you could find this sign up sheet to let me know that you'd like to be connected. It'd be best if you could pick one of them and not all five,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm going to, in my email back to folks, I'll always say, you can shop around a little if you want, but in the end, I urge you to pick one. I urge you to focus because, well, if you don't focus, it won't add up to much.
Well, this is wonderful. We're at we're at time, but it's such a service because people do say, where do I plug in? And I'm like, I don't always know the answer.
Yeah,
And the answer isn't always available or isn't always widely known. So this
yeah,
is great. This is great.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you so much, Sam. And I think you've said how people can find your
yeah,
website, and I'll also get it and the name of your book. And thanks for what you're doing.
yeah. It's a thrill. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, I'm gonna stop recording.